we are doing the rapid fire round. What's the biggest mistake startups make in their early stages?
Not looking at the long-term horizon.
The most important quality in a successful founder?
Resilience.
Bootstrap or seek funding early?
And that's a tough nut to crack. Depends on, it's a choice that you make.
The most exciting emerging tech trend for startups?
Now, there's something in the deep tech space, very deep tech, which affects humanity at large. Most people would think it's AI, but it's not.
One word to describe the current startup ecosystem?
Globally, again, I mean, we are getting into FOMO, fear of missing out, kind of investing with the AI hype and craze, which actually is not hype. In the short term, it's hype. In India, we are at the best point that we can be in the last 12, 14 years because the mistakes have been made, learnings have been done, and we are at the cusp of a kind of a revolution in India, not being left behind with our global peers. So very exciting, I think. On every stage, very exciting time to be in.
Never start a business just to make money, but always start a business to make a difference. Hello, and welcome to Rabbi Rashi podcast. Amit. Now, something about Amit. He's a growth strategist, director at Factoryal, superhuman being, excellent at sales, and for me, personally, he's a super blogger as well. Amit, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है.
Thank you so much, Rashi. Pleased to be here.
To start with Amit, I would want you to share your journey. कहाँ तक कैसे आप फैक्टोरियल तक पहुँचे? Let's hear.
Wow. I mean, it's been a while, almost about 28 years now, and much of it is unplanned. So, I mean, I'm a person who likes to go with the flow. Of course, I mean, there are some parts which I like to do, but so I belong to a multi-generational business family. Business was also always a part at dinner table conversations, and I started helping my parents at a much younger age also. Grew up across countries, across cultures, so a lot of those things shape up who I am today. So I started, finishing my schooling from Delhi, and prior to that in other countries, including in Africa. While I was doing my management, helping my sister who had started a business of exports, I had come back to India to help her at a trade show. Back in the day, we had marketing through trade shows. A lot of the stuff had to be done, right? I mean, there was no Googling things, right? So I was helping my sister at a trade show. And as luck would have it, we had some international buyers there presenting. And I helped crack a sales deal at that point, way back in 98, I believe, yeah, with a very big American retailer who took a fancy to us somehow. Our booth was the smallest in that exhibition at Pragati Maidan amongst all the stalwarts. And so I got a kick out of it. I said, well, this is good if I help crack a sales deal, which was a huge number, even in today's time, some $150,000. And I was like, this is what I wanted to do. But of course, I did go back to England, finish my management, but my heart and soul was, well, let me just get interested and involved in this business, which I did join. Incidentally, my own brother was in London that time, also part of the business, so I was helping him there as well. Did finish my management, entered that business, and then slowly over the years started managing the whole show. And to cut the story short, so about 15, 17 years we ran that business, fairly large for the times that they were in. There was nothing called startups or founders and venture capital and things like that. So it was like any family run business, fairly large, 200 odd people working for us. Somewhere around 2008, 2009, monotony had set in. Wanted to do something else, and my sister, who was a partner, moved out of the business and moved out of the country also. So I thought, now, why do the same thing? And technology was a personal passion for me, having grown up with it like everybody else from the 90s, and wanted to dabble in that. So I shut down that business. Again, There was no concept of selling off businesses or merger acquisitions and all at that point. And I moved to the US at that point. Was kind of not fed up, but just done with everything in India, with the factory and everything. And rather than technology, I ended up doing the same business on the other side in New York. I had a showroom in Manhattan. And 4 or 5 years did some good things. Also got a lot of exposure to the whole technology startup space because the US was far ahead of us at that point also. 2014, due to certain personal reasons, I made the move back to India, even though the earlier move was a near permanent one. But I came back and again was at a crossroads on what to do. Almost was thinking of a semi retirement from work, not from life, and had plans to just move to Goa and just chill out. But as luck would have it, helping a friend's friend, I ended up being a co-founder at a technology company in the events space in Hyderabad. And that's what started my journey of what I've been over the last 10, 11 years now, part of the startup ecosystem. So I ran that business at a company called Mera Events, which scaled up very rapidly in 2014. We raised some funding. In raising funding, I started getting involved with the venture capital ecosystem, which we did raise some $2 million at that point, and started meeting a lot of other entrepreneurs, founders who looked up to me to give them guidance because I came from a business background and had the fundamentals of running a business. So, I mean, running businesses was nothing new to me. But I got very excited, and 2014 was the time when the whole startup scene in India was coming up. We had the Flipkarts, Olas, Oyos, and a lot of foreign companies like Amazon, Uber coming into India. A lot of activity. So virtually for the next I think 9 to 10 months, I was living out of a suitcase, hopping flights, 10, 15 flights a week, and I'm not exaggerating. And I quite enjoyed it, right? So one thing led to the other. Eventually, after about 1.5 years, I did exit that company, a choice by me and the co-founder, because whatever had to be done was done already, and it was on autopilot stage. Then I started a venture builder come incubator out of Singapore, Mumbai with two more partners. And now over the last 7, 8 years, somewhat by default, as I told you, I don't plan much. And somewhat by a little bit choice, I've been in the advisory space, helping companies scale, grow in multiple capacities. Currently a partner director at a boutique management consulting firm called Factoryal, where we do a bunch of things, including advising growth stage companies, helping them raise funds, investing in them also in some capacities sometimes. And yeah, so it's exciting. And as an individual, I remain at large an ecosystem enabler for many startups, who reach out to me invariably. About 15, 20 odd of them reach out every week, which is quite humbling for me also. And it's been an exciting 27, 28 years now. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. And I can see the glow on your face speaking about your own journey. This is beautiful. Okay, Amit, most of the podcasts these days are talking about startups को ऐसा करना चाहिए, startups को वैसा करना चाहिए. I want to speak to you from the investors, perspective now. Investors को क्या करना चाहिए? ये बताओ आप.
Good question. Actually, see, Indian context में बोले तो a lot of mistakes have been made over the last 10, 12 years, and that's the age of the Indian startup ecosystem, maybe 14 years at maximum. So mistakes were made because India is and was also kind of the last frontier for global venture capitalists. Silicon Valley is much mature, Europe is saturated, China has its own issues and very localized. So India and everybody looked at the 1 billion plus TAM that we call, right? The total addressable market, which it wasn't, because India is a multitude of things. We are not a homogeneous market like US or the China. Every state is like a country in itself. We are much like a Europe, by the way, and that's how we should have been. So luckily, unluckily, because of the British, we've become one country, which is fascinating, right? Because you get to work with so many different things. So venture capitalists have made a lot of these mistakes, Of course, not intentionally, but they made some bets which haven't paid out. Now we are at an inflection point where good things are happening. Lessons have been learned. अब venture capitalist को क्या करना चाहिए? Of course, there's no straight answer. Depends on who they back and why, right? That why is very important. So when a venture capitalist backs an early stage company, ideally they're backing the founder, right? The founding team. And irrespective of pedigree, right? एक तो इंडिया में ये culture है because of our cultural social issues. Pedigree matters a lot. IIT, IIM, and things which shouldn't matter, right? As long as the founder has a long-term vision to scale and is also solving some problems. So if you have a problem solution mindset, things should be good and have a long-term horizon. Many venture capitalists or investors have a short-term horizon, look for quick returns, and we know the result of that, right? I mean, 95% of the startups in India are still loss-making, right? But over the last 2 years, many of them are coming of age, where the focus is on sustainability. When I say sustainability, sustainable business, that the business can sustain without funding also, right? So I think an investor should look at those points. Ki tomorrow I stop funding this company. Can it sustain on its own? That's the most important part. And also bet on innovation and not copy paste. We are done with copy pasting Silicon Valley models, right? I mean, eventually everything is a copy paste. A Flipkart is a copy of Amazon, and Ola is an Uber, and Oyo is an Airbnb, and so on and so forth, right? But now I think we are at a good point where, for the first time ever, India is not going to play catch up, right? We are right there. So when we talk about new technologies, which we'll talk later on, we're just right there, because in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, we always missed the bus. India was not looked up as a destination to innovate parallelly with the global peers. And now we are doing that. So, yeah, exciting times, I believe.
Absolutely wonderful. Okay, Amit, you've been an investor for a while and you know the entire ecosystem very well. What are your three key learned lessons? Let's hear.
Don't bet on current trends, whatever they might be. For example, during COVID, everybody started betting on certain sectors because we were all inbound and nobody had the foresight to see that this is a black swan event. So, current trends like crypto was a trend, NFTs were a trend, which I never understood. AI currently. So, don't look at trends. Number two, back the founders, right? Or even if it's a single founder, do a thorough assessment if that particular person, individual, he or she, has the wherewithal to go the long run, right? Nothing happens in a couple of years, right? I mean, raising a business is almost like raising a child, right? So it takes minimum 10 years to raise a child. And similarly, it takes 10 years to make a career in everything. And thus, it takes a minimum of 10 years to scale up a business consistently and all. So it's a long term horizon. Number three, also look at that problem solution mindset if they are solving, especially in a country like India. We are a large country with large problems on all levels, starting from grassroots level. And ये जो सब लोग बात करते हैं, हम भारत को cater कर रहे हैं, right? So that Bharat is actually grassroots India, not the pitch deck Bharat, which many founders just write Bharat. You have to be in the grassroots. About 700-800 million of our population is grassroots, which doesn't care about fancy pitch decks and fancy applications and things like that. So see what the problem is being solved. As I said, I mean, a large country, we have large problems to be solved and tons of opportunities thus.
And I think this is absolutely very insightful what you just said. Amit, now let's talk about the mindset. Okay, you as an investor, probably you can take me as a startup founder. एक बड़ा कॉमन सा माइंडसेट है कि बस कंपनी बना लेंगे, इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए पिच कर लेंगे, इन्वेस्टमेंट आ जाएगी, थोड़े टाइम बाद लॉस दिखा देंगे और चले जाएंगे. Is it that easy?
It's not. It's not. It seems so easy because because we are a young ecosystem, right? So there was a lot of exuberance over the last 10 years from all quarters, including the government. Like we had the Startup India policy by the Honorable Prime Minister. Now, on the back of it, right, a lot of exuberance. We have startup media, and I say startup media because that media has been born out of only reporting on startups. What is the reporting that they've done? Is only funding and unicorns, right? So this is a fallacy. It's never been easy. Of course, there have been some success stories like a Flipkart and Ola, uh, and so on and so forth, right? These flashy companies, flashy entrepreneurs, by the way, larger than life figures that they've become. And we see the result. Or a Byju's, for example, another flamboyant example of an entrepreneur, or a Vijay Shekhar Sharma from Paytm, right? They've been seen as beacons of the whole ecosystem. And after now 10, 12 odd years, we've seen where these companies are, right? So for me, flamboyance doesn't work, working behind the scenes work, which all these people have come to understand also, right? You have to build slowly, sustainably, and no, it's not easy. And so over the last 2 3 years, which we'll discuss further in this chat, we've had this phenomenon called funding winter. According to me, it's not a negative but a positive, because as the wheat में से वो chaff करते हैं पूरा निकलता है वो, so the same thing has happened, right? So all the fluff and everything has been taken away, and now you have these fundamentally good companies which are being built or are focusing on uh, a basic thing called profitability. See, making a profit in a business or running the business for a long time is not rocket science, right? That's how businesses have been done fundamentally for centuries. I can tell you the oldest company in the world is a Japanese company from 500 AD. So it's about 15, 1600 years in the business, right? So there was this fallacy that startups raise money quickly, inflate valuations, founders take up some secondary exits, become millionaires larger than life and all. But ultimately, it doesn't work out, right? Uh, so, I mean, just build with the problem solution mindset, and the growth will come. We're a large country, and growth comes from every quarter.
So, um, have you ever done a hand holding to a company which was dying?
Yes, indeed, we have. Unfortunately, I can't name the company, but during COVID, we were approached by a few of these companies, which even the big four consulting firms like an EY or McKinsey refused to work with. And we did help them because we did see that these were genuine entrepreneurs who just got stuck in the whole COVID scenario with lots of things not in their control, right? And they paid a price for it. So we did help them, almost revived a company in the consumer space which was dead. And but ultimately, see, when a company is dying, there are always reasons for it. And unfortunately, in the Indian ecosystem, the reason, it's ironical, the reason has been overfunding. You would think that if a company is overfunded, how can it die? So when they are overfunded, they overburn capital, they overspend, they have no control, and there comes a time where the funders stop backing the company. Byju's is the prime example, the largest example, by the way. Right? I mean, they've been funded massively. Today, they don't have money to pay salaries. Just last night, I saw a report and put out a post that they've slashed the salaries of their sales staff by 90%. Entry level people are getting 10,000 rupees, which is peanuts. And this is a company which was valued at $22 billion, right? So this is a company which nobody can help at this point. We know that, right? So yeah, there have been a few success stories also, but it depends on a multitude of factors.
What is your, I would like to ask you, what are your three strong advisors to all the founders, startups out there, especially before they go for the pitch, and what are the basics they need to be, working on, let's say.
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, it depends on what stage the company is. So I would assume this is early stage that you're asking about, and the first time that they want to raise some funding, right? Get their basics right, right? In order to pitch to an investor, get your basics right, right? Which would mean again solving with a problem solution mindset, and even if not, right? I mean, the fourth time I'm saying problem solution mindset, but sometimes you can enter a crowded space, crowded market also. Like I give you an analogy of a pizza, right? is, I think, the most eaten dish across the world globally, right? A pizza is a pizza is a pizza. No, but you can experiment with the toppings, right? That's what everybody does globally, right? So that's similarly, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can have fancy spokes in the wheel. That's how you enter a crowded market, right? If you have a strong brand positioning. Uh, Number two, again, have a long term focus. Don't think that uh, if I do get funded, all my problems will be solved. No, rather, you will have to be more cautious and careful. Taking someone's money is a huge responsibility, and these are not bank debts. This is somebody, just putting a bet on you, the founder, right? So you have to be very cautious on how you spend it. And from day one, if you have a finger on the pulse, right, things will not go bad, right? You cannot think that today I have, let's say, $1 million, I'll spend it as I like and I'll raise another 5 million. No. So then you get into the habit. As humans, we are very quick to adapt to habits which are difficult to change, across all habits that we develop in life, good and bad, right? So if you get into the habit of spending too much money, burning too much cash, being frivolous with it, you get there. And number three, the most important part is the team, right? A lot of people think team is not important, but for me, I think team is the number one thing which can take you forward. If you look at large companies today across the world, right, especially in the technology sector, be it a Microsoft or a Google or something, apart from the founders, there are teams, right? They might not come in the limelight as much till the founder is running the operations. Apple, the largest company in the world now by all metrics, right? Uh, Steve Jobs at some point only had one job to do, was to select the teams for functions, right? I mean, and I'll take just another 20 seconds to give an analogy, which I posted also. A friend of mine, a senior veteran, made this. We were having a discussion in Pune, around a fire. We were all sitting in December, and he said Steve Jobs was like Jesus Christ. We're like, what the hell? I mean, why is he talking about religion and all? He said, no, like Jesus Christ had 12 apostles who sat with him on the Last Supper, apparently. He says Steve Jobs also had these team of great people that he meticulously selected. And the analogy is like in Jesus Christ, I mean, the religion has gone forward, or his philosophy, for over 2000 years now. Similarly, Apple over the last 30, 40 years has been consistently doing good, all because of the team, right? So team, I think, is the most important part, right? Initially, you might not be able to afford one, but you can choose your co-founders, take as much time as possible, and that shapes the culture of your organization.
So, you just spoke about posting, right, on the social media. And I usually find you very active onto LinkedIn, on the LinkedIn, and even voicing the correct things. Usually people will not do that. So, what is your take on that?
No, I do believe so. See, everybody is an individual. Some people are not so expressive, some are. I have been, due to my upbringing across cultures, across societies, I've been a very outgoing personality in person. And the same thing is translated onto, social media also, right? Prior to what I do now on LinkedIn, I think Facebook, I used to do it back in the day. But of course, it's not relevant to business anymore. So for me, number one is expression, right? We live in a hyper information age where we're bombarded with so much information 24/7. So for me, individually, the only way to let out everything and kind of defragment my own brain is to express. And I also get better at my thought process. Number two, of course, to speak on current issues by not taking sides is also to, a lot of people look at me as an industry, enabler, or I won't use the word leader. I hate that word, but as an enabler, right? So people look up. They don't have channels for advice because most of the media, for some reason, would be biased negatively or positively. So I like to play, as some people call me, the devil's advocate, uh, because I mean, for me, both sides are important, a startup side and an investor side, and we play the role being in the middle. Having played both the sides before, I've been a founder multiple times, I've been an angel investor, so I know both sides of it, right? And giving my candid opinion, I think, is a gift that I also have, right, without fearing for any repercussions from anybody, right? I mean, I don't owe anything to anybody. And being authentic, I think that's more important. Over the last 3 4 days, in fact, I've been writing so much on this whole thing called authenticity. And in the age we live in, these algorithms are deciding what we post and all. So when people start becoming a slave to these algorithms, they start pleasing other people, following the herd, and they lose their authenticity. So, writing or expressing to please somebody, I don't think is the correct way, right? Always write whatever it is. Some people will like it, some might not like it, but you have to be interested in the people who resonate with your thoughts. So, quality over quantity.
So, this is a very valid point and a great takeaway. Podcasts are also the best platform to vent out. So, whether you're doing a conversational podcast or you're doing just a solo podcast, I think this is the best way to remain healthy. And I think you solved the purpose of coming for this, podcast, Amit, because you just hit it on the nail. What is your success mantra?
No, there's no mantra as such. As I told you, as in life, I've never planned anything. So I believe that, see, as a person, as individual, especially in India, culturally, we like to bucket people. So and so person is good at sales. So and so person is good at marketing, or is a technologist and should not be speaking about other issues. I don't believe that. Right? We are a human being, a 360-degree human being. And going back in history, in time, we had the Gurukul system, for example, right? Where pupils were taught on everything. They were taught the art of war, because I mean those times everybody had to fight wars. They were taught philosophy. They were taught religion. They were taught about life, and that's what makes a human complete. Now, university, you would be surprised to know the word comes from Latin universal learning, universita, right? So, universal learning means you're learning a variety of subjects about life. You go back to Greek mythology, the philosophers were much in demand, right? Be it Socrates or whoever else they were. They were the teachers of all the rulers at that point. And in our own culture, in the Hindu culture, every kingdom, every court would have a guru there. Now, the guru was not with religious connotations. The guru was to guide somebody on everything. So I follow more or less the same thing, that a person has to be multifaceted, a polymath, as I call these individuals, and to a certain extent, me myself. Why should I be restricted to one school of thought, right? And especially because I've done everything. So speak on a variety of issues, and a philosophy, or I'm a spiritualist at heart, by the way. It does come out, right? Without asking people to follow me or not. But if somebody can resonate with my thoughts, and I always say this to people, people have this fallacy of following a messenger or finding fault in a messenger, be it a guru or anybody, right? A leader also in various stratas of society. I say, no, don't look at the messenger, look at the message, right? Forget the messenger could be controversial or whoever, right? If the message is good, follow the message. If it resonates with you, think about it, apply it to your life. And I follow the same thing, and thus I do share on a variety of things, which all, and I don't even plan what I'm going to write tomorrow morning, right? It's all more or less impromptu. While coming here, I drafted a post which I scheduled, and it should be posted in the next 20 minutes, I believe, right? It just occurred to me, something about the D2C industry in India, direct to consumer. And I posted a long, I think about 3,000 character post while in coming and driving here, right? So, I mean, I believe authenticity comes from whatever one is thinking. When you start planning, that's when things go bad, because when you're planning, you'll think, log kya sochenge, wo uske liye wo aisa karega, wo, it really doesn't matter, right? I mean, think about what's coming to your mind and express it.
So before we go to our rapid fire round, the last question I want to know, you as an investor. When you lose money, then
No, then nothing. I mean, nothing in the sense, you see, an investor typically has many companies that they invest in, right? It's not the single company. And most investors, and I'm talking institutional investors, follow something called as a Pareto principle, which is an 80-20 principle, meaning 20% of the investments on an average could be lower, higher, slightly, few percentage points, will give you 80% of the returns, right? So imagine a scenario where you have 10 companies in a portfolio you have invested in varying amounts. Even though you want all 10 to do well, when you invest, you validate each one of them and want it to be a multi-bagger and become a unicorn and so on and so forth. But at the back of your mind, you do know out of 10, hypothetically, only one or two would give you exponential returns. Three, four of them would actually, unfortunately, die down also because you invest in moonshots, technologies which could scale up, could not scale up, and two, three companies in that 10 would be on par. You'll be lucky if you return your money. I give you the example of a large investing company called SoftBank, led by this maverick man called Masayoshi Son in Japan. And he's been known to invest insane amounts even in India. You'd be surprised to know his only lucky investment has been an investment in Alibaba, the Chinese company, where he invested in Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, about $20 million many decades ago, I think 25 years ago. And he just invested in a very young founder, small company. And when the company IPO'd, that 20 million was worth some $25 billion, right? So that's the largest return in history. And that's been the only significant return they've ever made apart, they must have 120, 150 investments now, right? So that's how, and that return keeps giving. It's like a cash cow. Every 2-3 years, they will withdraw some amount from that company. I think they've cashed out now. So that's how. So yes, at the back of the mind, it does hurt because ultimately money is money if you lose money, to answer your question. But then it all evens out in the end, right? So if you get 100x rarely from one particular investment, actually it's not 100x. When you equate it with all the other investment, it comes to significant, maybe a 3x, 4x on the total portfolio investment. So it's a part and parcel. I mean, that's why venture capital is more like playing the casino, right? I mean, you don't know what odds or what hand you're going to be played at because you're not actually running that company. You're in the business of investing, not running a company. You're backing a founder to run and scale that company.
So if you have a weak heart, don't become an investor, please. That's what he's trying to say. That you have to let go a lot of things. Okay, now let's do the funny today, Amit. So we are doing the rapid fire round. What's the biggest mistake startups make in their early stages?
Uh, yeah, I mean, there are tons of mistakes.
It's a rapid fire. One.
Not looking at the long term horizon.
The most important quality in a successful founder.
Resilience.
Bootstrap or seek funding early?
And that's a tough nut to crack. Depends on, it's a choice that you make.
Okay. The most exciting emerging tech trend for startups?
Something which actually hasn't been worked upon till now. Something in the deep tech space, very deep tech, which affects humanity at large. Most people would think it's AI, but it's not.
One word to describe the current startup ecosystem.
In India or global? In India, globally, again, I mean, we are getting into FOMO, fear of missing out, kind of investing with the AI hype and craze, which actually is not hype. In the short term, it's hype. In India, we are at the best point that we can be in the last 12, 14 years because the mistakes have been made, learnings have been done, and we are at the cusp of a kind of a revolution in India, not being left behind with our global peers. So very exciting, I think. On every stage, very exciting time to be in.
Okay, what is your favorite business book?
I'm not a big book reader, but still, I mean, there's one book by the founder of a venture capital firm called Anderson Horowitz. It's called The Hard Things About Hard Things.
Okay. And what piece of advice you would give to your younger self, the younger Amit?
Should have planned my life better if I could. No regrets, but if I could have planned it better to have more free time for myself.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee, always.
Coffee.
Always. I mean,
Okay.
coffee addict.
Okay, the best city you've traveled to?
Venice has to be Venice.
Okay. And
Luckily, I've been there 3 times, but once I've spent 5 days sightseeing. So yeah.
okay. Early bird or night owl?
In my current phase of life, early bird, but almost for 20 years, I was a late night bird also.
Absolutely wonderful. So this was a great podcast, mixture of some, solutions for the startups, also some personal stories from and with Amit Gupta. So if you're looking for some great advices to run your business, he's open to collaborations as well. Get in touch with Amit. His details are available on the podcast. Amit, I would like you to say some kind words for us, please.
Now, firstly, Rashi, thank you so much for inviting me over. And I've been a big fan of the work that you're doing currently, and whatever I've seen over the past few months, right? And all the guests that you feature. And I like this whole quality approach, by the way. This is not something quantity that something's coming out every 2 3 days or a weekly basis also. So yeah, very thankful to be here and very excited for the episode to come out.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much, Amit, for coming
Thank you.
over. Thank you.